Gracie and I are at the coal mines today, and we're on the hunt for something. We can thank Charles O'Hare Booth for our search today. He was the Commandant of Port Arthur from 1833 through to 1844, which also covered the coal mines. He kept a diary from 1851, when he was 14 years old, through to when he was married in 1838. In that diary, an entry on the 28th of June 1837 caught my attention. Cold caught me by the nose, visited the main shaft as it is to be, lower works and etc. the latter left off for the present. Returned home just about dark, road bad. The comment and etc. the latter left off for the present has me very interested, and that is the aim of our search today, to find out what was left off from the main shaft that he's talking about. My first port of call before starting today's search was to go to the Tasmanian archives and see if there are any documents, any communication between Hobart and the coal mines and vice versa in relation to any building of a shaft down there at that time period. While searching the archives, I come across this document dated February of 1838, which is just over 6 months of when Charles Booth made the entry in his diary regarding the shaft. The document I found was written by the Royal Engineers in Hobart, and it gave a list of material to construct a double line of railroad from new shaft to end of new jetty as per annex sketch, 1 mile and 200 yards. The document also mentioned a second tramway, and it said to construct a single line of railroad from Coal Point to Slope and Main as per annex sketch, 1 mile and 5.5 furlongs. Might this reference to the single line railroad be what Charles Booth is referring to when he says and etc. the latter left off for the present? To figure that out, we need to go back to where they mentioned the double line railroad, and it was to be built from the new shaft to the end of the new jetty. Let's figure out where that new jetty was first. From 1834 through to around 1837, the coal was shipped out of the coal mines via 2 jetties that were located up near the penitentiary buildings. By 1837, a new jetty was built, and that was built at Plunkett Point. The reason why it was built at Plunkett Point was to service the shaft that had been built in 1836, and the tramway from the 1836 shaft went all the way down to Plunkett Point. And this is the shaft that you see on my videos quite a bit, especially on the one called The Search for William Thompson's Coal Hole. So now we know where the new jetty was located. Let's try to work out where the new shaft was located in regards to that. And the engineer's plan said it was 1 mile and 200 yards away, which is roughly 1,800 metres. So I have my orange arrow on Plunkett Point. Let's measure 1,800 metres using my GPS program and see where it ends up. Now, there is no shaft 1.8 kilometres away, but there is a shaft 1.6 kilometres away. 200 metres difference in distance than what the engineer's plan had, but keep in mind that the engineer may have been just doing it off physically marking it out with chains, or it might have even been some type of estimate passed to him from the coal mines. Regardless of the discrepancy in measurements, I believe this is the shaft that Booth was referring to when he referred to the new main shaft. If you visited the coal mines, you've more than likely visited this shaft. It's labelled as the air shaft, which is incorrect. It was the production shaft that they intended to mine from in 1838. So we now know the main shaft that Booth was referring to in June of 1837, and what the engineer referred to as the new shaft in February of 1838. Now we have the main shaft's location worked out. Let's see if we can find where this single line railroad would go from and to. Now the document says it goes from Coal Point to Slope and Main. Coal Point was the whole coal mines area, but I believe what they were referring to is the main shaft that we just discussed. The document gives the length of the railroad as 1 mile and 5.5 furlongs, and that converts to around 2.7 kilometres. So if we measure 2.7 kilometres east of the 1837 main shaft, we end up in the ocean, so we know it's not in that direction, and measuring 2.7 kilometres west also ends up in the ocean. So that means it must be north of the 1837 shaft, as it wouldn't be south, as that was known as Saltwater River. And if we zoom in at around the 2.7 kilometre mark on our map, we come to this cleared area here. So now we have a possible feature to have a look at. Let's get down on the ground and see what we can find. I'm now 2.7 kilometres away from what Booth referred to as the 1837 main shaft, and this hole in the ground, filled full of water, looks very much like a mine shaft you'd see at the coal mines. Along here there is spoil along the back, quite a large amount of spoil, and of course you may suggest that this was a little dam for livestock because private individuals did lease or buy the land here for farming purposes after the coal mines were closed completely in 1900. But it just seems to me if it was going to be a dam for a private farmer, then the soil would be going all the way around it to increase the size of it. But here the spoil is only across this bank here. Now I'm back here at the edge of the spoil bank, so it's probably 20 metres away from the shaft, and it travels along here. So looking at this spoil, it doesn't seem to suggest to me, from looking at the ones at the coal mines, that it went very deep. And what's more, along the ground here, I'm seeing lots of shale, and that normally doesn't occur here under the sand until you get to around the 10 metre mark, maybe a little bit less in some of the shafts I've seen, but it's certainly not just on the surface. So it's the same as you see at the coal mines, which leads me to believe that it was all chipped out by hand, not by a bulldozer. By throwing a rock and a bit of rope in there, the depth is 1 metre, but if they hit shale, this would have been a lot deeper earlier on. On the eastern side there's more shale. This looks like a block of sandstone and another block of sandstone, and walking through here I have not seen blocks that big occurring naturally on top of the soil here. It's just soil. You get the occasional tiny block of sandstone, but not the size of this. So I suggest all this here has come out of that hole in the ground there. If that was dug as a small dam for water storage for a farm for a private settler, then I suggest that they would have let these blocks around the side of the dam to reinforce it and built it up higher that way. Why wasn't this shaft completed? Let's pop back to the main shaft and have a quick talk about that first. In April of 1838, a report to Hobart from the coal mines states that the main shaft was completed by October 1838 and have a depth of 32 metres, though it is only now 24 metres deep. This is due to most visitors having an uncontrollable need to drop either rocks or tree branches into the shaft. Once the shaft was completed, there's no further record of that shaft, but I suspect there may have only been a small amount of coal found, or a fault line may have prevented any further access to the seam if it was located. I have yet to locate a single speck of coal here on the ground surrounding the shaft, like I would see at other shafts here where they actually hit the coal seam. By late 1838 or early 1839, work on a new shaft had commenced. By September of 1839 it was completed to a depth of 48 metres. That became the new main shaft and the shaft that you can see now. As for the 2.7 kilometre shaft, there is no further record after Charles Booth mention of and etc. the latter left off at present, which I believe the comment refers to this shaft. The shaft was dug to a depth of around 10 metres, and at that depth it could have been dug by convicts without the need for winding gear at that stage. Why it was not completed, there is no record. I suspect they may have decided not to go ahead until they're sure they had located a plentiful coal seam at the main shaft. Alternatively, the cost of construction of the 2.7 kilometres of tramway from here to the main shaft might have been seen as excessive. Plus the security of the tramway might have also been seen as an issue, as the convicts pushing the coal carts would have had plenty of opportunities to abscond over the 2.7 kilometre distance. As for the tramways, I don't believe the tramway for the 2.7 kilometre shaft was ever built. As for the one at the main shaft, they may have started that tramway, but there's no evidence that it went across the hill that I can find, nor is there any record of it being built. I suspect they may have waited until they hit the coal seam successfully before starting the commencement of the tramway, and when there was no coal, they didn't go ahead with the tramway as planned. So there you have it, the 1837 main shaft and the 1837 2.7 kilometre shaft at the coal mines.